Good evening, folks, and I'd like to open the meeting of the Finance Committee. On behalf of the committee, I'll chair. The committee members are Councilor Gould, Councilor Manning Martin, Councilor McGinn, and my good friend, Councilor John Turkow. First item on the agenda is a transfer of funds under the date of February 15th regarding the fire budget for overtime in the amount of $450,000. Mr. Gingrich.
Thank you. The fire chief is requesting a transfer to fund the overtime account. He's had several short-term and long-term illnesses, some retirements, and some other staffing issues that's driven this account higher. The fire chief's here, and he could elaborate further.
Chief, we'd love to hear from you.
Evening, Council. Thank you for having me. I realize this is the second year I've been here for this. It's been a rough couple of years with a lot of long-term injuries. I currently have, once again, I'm back at 6. I had 3 retirees. We were catching up with personnel. The end of last year, we had put 7 firefighters on, but of course, come January, 3 additional firefighters retired. So then we're paying buyouts, out of our existing budget. So it seems like we're always playing catch up. The other piece of this, I think, that plays a big part, and Mike mentioned it, is staffing, and I'll take some responsibility for that. I think in my determination and my desire to bring the Peabody Fire Department up to where it needed to be for a very long time, I commend the mayor for hearing me on this as well as the council. I cut my pencil pretty close a couple of years ago when we reorged. I really wanted to get this through. It's something that had to go through, regardless of the cost. At the current time, we were running 2-man companies, 2 of the companies with no supervision. It's just, in today's fire world, it's just unacceptable. So I think it's a variety of those issues that we talked about, our long-term injuries and illnesses, trying to recruit as fast as people retire. But I think I have asked in this year's budget to increase the fire department by 4 additional firefighters to make up for that increase. And to give you an idea, a number of years ago, prior to this administration, we were running the fire department with as low as 17 people. We now run the fire department at 21. So that was a terrific move forward. And we're talking about 4 additional staff times 4 shifts. So I don't think that my pencil kept up with the growth. So this year, to offset, and I think if you were to take those 4 additional firefighters that I'm asking for, and you looked at this additional money that I'm asking for, I think you're going to see the dollar pretty close. And I think that's really kind of where, of course, with the other items we talked about, you put all of these things in one recipe, and this is, kind of where we've gotten here. So considering this is the second year in a row I've been short, I thought it was only the wise and prudent thing to really address it, hit the nail on the head and look at it and say we need to grow just a little bit more to get us to where we are, today. So any questions, I'd be glad to answer them.
Councilors, any questions? Councilor Manning Martin.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just very briefly, Chief, you touched upon it, and I just pulled out last year's budget, and I'm not putting my finger on it, but I'm sure you know. What with respect just to overtime, not the additional staff that you need, of course, I support that. I'm just curious about your proposed budget for overtime, just the overtime portion, to what you're asking for, because in this request, it's not clear. It's kind of lumped in. So yep. What did you budget for? Because I remember the budget session and the same thing with the police. Right. I think we knew even that night that the overtime was under budgeted. So I'm not surprised,
Mm-hmm.
So if we just
I
try and
think,
focus more when we move
yeah.
forward on budgeting to hit the true mark of overtime, which should be an average of the last 3 years. And I think we all knew that it was under when we went forward last year. So you are in a tough spot tonight. But if you could just tell me by how much you requested and how much you went over.
Yeah. Last year's budget, the prior fiscal year, we had a budget of $700,000. I believe I came to you folks last spring, and I think we requested an additional $560,000. Mike, I think that's correct last year? I'm sorry? Right. I'm saying, but last year we had $700,000. I came to you for an additional $560,000. So last year's budget for this fiscal year, we budgeted an additional $200,000. We went from $700,000 to $900,000. So if you look at that dollar amount and you couple that with a 2% raise, which drives up the overtime rate, and you look at the additional 4 staffing, what's happening now with our staffing levels is that basically our groups are, we were running at 21, our groups are around right now about 24, 25. We allow, by contract, there's a lot of contractual obligations that we have, personal days, vacation time, a time due. So what's happening is every shift, we're basically hiring overtime. It's just the norm every time we go out. So by having these 4 additional staffing, I looked at it, and basically, if I had an additional person on every shift, I'd probably be only standing here before you today looking for about $100,000 at the most. That offset of that 1.5 for that that one in every group, which equals 4, would put me probably about $100,000 short, not the $450 that we're asking for. So I think that, coupled with a small increase next year, will really bring us to the target number and put us exactly where we need to be, and have a true budget for the services we're providing.
Thank you. And that's the term that I'm glad you use, is a true budget for, so that we know what we're going into moving forward.
Right.
And then you don't have to keep coming back and,
Yeah.
Right.
And I do, and I take responsibility for that in my eagerness, to get what I knew we needed to get to, and we're where we need to be. We're at 21-man divisions. Every company has 3. Every company has a supervisor. We're at great levels, and I commend you all and the mayor for doing that. Thank you.
Mayor.
Thank you. As always, there's certain budget items that are always very difficult to guess. And, we always do come forward with true numbers based on the information we have at the time when we do the budget. Special education costs are always very tricky, as many of you know. That's been a very difficult item for the school committee this year. But also snow and ice, which we were doing great until very recently, and then get into police and fire overtime. Last year, we recall, we needed additional money for police and fire overtime. When we had the budget review sessions last spring, the chief did ask for more money for that line item. We bumped it up from $700,000 to $900,000 based on the fact that we were adding some additional firefighters. We thought that would cover the gap, but we felt that was a true number going forward with that. We had some long-term injuries, illnesses that have really caused trouble for us. You look at the police department. They came last year with the same type of number. We added the same number to the police department based on, again, what we thought were true numbers based on information we had, and that number is coming in and tracking right exactly as we budgeted for. So the fire department, though, was in a different situation this year because of some long-term injuries. I can tell you that we have started the process with civil service a couple of weeks ago, where we are looking to add new firefighters. Our number I think we're looking at right now is 7. We're targeting July 1st for that. The civil service process is starting. That usually takes a couple of months to move forward with the background checks and the interviews and all of that. But we think also that will help to get those additional firefighters in to the ranks to help with the overtime costs. But it has been a difficult couple of years, but to the chief's credit and to his defense, he did come and ask for more money during the budget. When we kind of prepared the final budget, I thought that based on the information I had, I did increase it to $200,000 thinking that would work, but the chief did ask for more money at that time.
Councilor Turco.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Through you to the chief. Chief, will the $400,000 tonight, will that cover you till the fiscal year July 1st? Or are we looking for more money after tonight?
I'm certainly hoping so. Again, I'd hate to sit here and tell you definitely 100%. I think that lot was going to be driven by, do I have any additional injuries, illnesses? Do I have any additional large-scale emergencies? We're sending mutual aid, so it's a tough number to sell. And you know, and to back up what the mayor said previously, you know, last year's target number, although, you know, I want to take that back a little bit, 7 guys being out, when you take that 7 people, and that's almost an overtime at every shift. So those are the variables that I would love to sit here and say to you, yeah, that's going to take me for the rest of the year. Everything being equal, if I get some staff in and move things around, I don't get any injuries. But even like the other day, I finally got 2 back and I got 2 out. You know, things I have, you know, so it's just that it's just hard for me to sit here and say to you, yes, 100% that's going to make it, but at the very least, it should be very close.
Thank you very much, that's all.
Thank you.
Any further councils? Seeing none, Council McGinn?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Move to approve the transfer from unreserved balance in the amount of $450,000 to fire budget overtime in the same amount, $450,000. So moved.
You've heard the motion by Council McGinn. Any questions, comments? Seeing none, roll call.
Councilors McGinn,
Yes.
Gould.
Yes.
Manning Martin,
Yes.
Turco,
Yes.
Gravel.
Yes.
Motion carries 5-0.
Thank you, councilors.
Thank you, Chief. The next item on the agenda I just overheard Tim training. It kind of threw me off a little bit there because he said, "You sure you're going to take a roll call vote?" I said, "I just did." The next item on the agenda is a statement of interest for the Welch School. Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and good evening, councilors. Very happy to be here today on behalf of the school committee to request approval for 2 statement of interest to be submitted to the MSBA, the Mass School Building Authority. With me tonight is our Superintendent, Herb Levine, our incoming Superintendent, Kara Murtag. We have school committee members Beverly Griffin Dunn and Joe Amico, and Mrs. Orfanos from the center school principal. Certainly also available to answer any questions that the committee may have. As you know, we review every year the condition of our buildings, and I did want to mention Tim Healy, our facilities director, is here as well, who knows the buildings inside and out, to determine what our needs are and to make requests and submissions to the Mass School Building Authority based on what we think the needs are. And certainly, I think all of you know our schools very well. A couple of the schools that need assistance we've identified this year as being the Welch School and the Center School. We've made some great investments as a city council, school committee. We've done some projects recently at the McCarthy School with new roof and windows, the Burke School, new roof and windows a couple of years back, and before that we did the Welch School roof, as well as last summer we did the high school roof. But certainly we need to keep up, try to extend the life cycle of our buildings, and we've identified the Welch School as the #1 priority. We've had a number of meetings, looked at all the different schools, looked at the information provided by Tim Healy and his department, and we felt that the Welch School would be our #1 priority that we wanted to submit going forward. And specifically, we're looking to have conversion of the conversion of the electrically heated school to a natural gas system, replacement of the existing obsolete and no longer serviceable HVAC system, and controls and replacement of windows and exterior doors throughout the school. Welch School is a wonderful community school, very tight-knit group, but it needs some assistance, and we feel that that is the #1 priority moving forward. Long overdue is a project at that school. In fact, the HVAC system, even to fix it, we can't even order the parts because they're no longer available to us. It's obsolete. The second submittal would be the center school, and all of you, we've presented the center school in the past. We'd like to move forward with a feasibility study to determine what would be best going forward, what type of project, whether it be an addition, a renovation, a new school. I think as a city, we just need to find out what our options are, what would be available to us. And we've submitted that as priority #2. We're only submitting this year 2 projects. Based on information research we've done, we believe it's better to move forward with 2 requests to the Mass School Building Authority rather than going with 3, 4, or 5, which we've done in the past. We wanted to identify these two specific needs, and we wanted to move forward with these requests. Based on last year, the timing, we were notified by the MSBA in September that the submittals that we made last year were denied, or not accepted by the MSBA, which was a bit disappointing. Last year, we did not prioritize the submittals. We put all 4 together. The 4 were the same, the Welch and the Center. We also put in for the Burke School, which were for Univents, and then also the Kiley School. We put those in together. We didn't prioritize. Again, based on information and research that we've done, we want to prioritize this year. And again, we've identified as a school committee, and I can say it was unanimous that we wanted to prioritize the Welch School being one, and then the Center School, which is in desperate need of work, and it needs to be a priority for us as well. And we wanted to move forward with those 2 schools rather than putting in more submittals. We as a group are here to answer any questions you may have. Certainly Tim Healy would be able to speak intimately on these proposals and on the different condition of our buildings. And I'd open it up now to any questions, Mr. Chairman.
Go for it. Do you have any questions? You leave it as is.
Leave it as is.
Councilor McGinn.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Mayor, as you might guess, I'm delighted that this is the singular priority this year. This is, in your own words, this one is long overdue. Just very happy that it is the #1 priority. In terms of the overall cost, is the estimated cost, did I read that correctly, at 1.3 million? What is the number?
I'll let Mr. Healy answer that. It's more than that. A lot more.
The MSBA does not require us to provide estimates at this point in the application process, but obviously for our purposes, we've tried to put some numbers on it. And the Welsh School, I think, would be around 4 million. So, yeah, we're eligible for 54% reimbursement, as you know.
56%.
Or, well, yeah, is it? 56? Okay.
56.14.
I stand corrected.
So the timing, Mr. Mayor, would be if we got approval on this, it would be the school committee's intent to move forward in what kind of a time frame on this project?
So just to mention again, the reimbursement rate would be approximately 56.14%. That's what we've gotten with the most recent projects. The most recent project being the high school roof. So if we were notified in September, I would try to move forward hoping that we could do the project that summer. So if we were to be successful this September of 18, the goal would be to do the project while the schools are closed the summer of 19. So we would work backwards from there to try to meet that timeline.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And, I know from explanations I've got on this before, there's no real way to break this up. I mean, the school committee person, Beverly Ann Griffin Dunn, has explained in the past that the HVAC system is integrated with the windows, so you actually can't do one without the other, as I understand it. So it does make complete sense to me to deal with this holistically, even given the size of the investment required here. So I fully support this. Thank you.
Questions from other members? Councilor Rosino.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, for allowing me to speak. I'm not on the subcommittee, but through you to the mayor. I appreciate you bringing this forward again. I remember last year when we brought these SOIs forward, both for the Welch as well as the center. And I know it was a difficult process last year, prioritizing. The Welch was one of the ones that I fought hard for last year, and this is something that I would absolutely support moving forward on the City Council. I think it's something that's desperately needed, and you know it's needed when you don't even have parts to fix a problem if it ends up happening. So I am in full favor of this moving forward. So thank you.
Other questions? Councilor Turco.
Mr. Chairman, I just wanted to move to receive a late communication from the school committee regarding both these projects. It's the vote tally sheets. It was on our
On the
desks.
suspension of rules, move to receive. All in favor? Any opposed? Vote. Any other questions? Just a comment and just an edification for the people who might be watching. What the mayor and the school committee are requesting is the approval for a statement of interest, which is, it's sort of the entry gate for the school building authority to allow us to be considered for reimbursement. Asking for the statement of interest to be approved just allows us to go to the school building authority and say, the city council and the school committee are on board, the city's on board, that if you put us into the pool of candidates who are going to receive grants for offsetting the cost of the buildings, then, you know, we can go forward. If they say no on the statement of interest, it doesn't stop us from going forward, but it clearly stops us from getting the matching funds of 56.14% of the proceeds. So it's always good, I think, to have something in there because you want to keep Peabody as a part of the SBA's thinking process. We don't want to be the outcasts coming in when it's way too late. So this is a good thing to do. So with that, are there any other questions? Anybody else have any other concerns? Being none, Councilman McGinn.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And I guess before I make a motion, adding to a comment made by Councilor Rossignol about inability to get parts, I would add that it's hard to even consider the windows anymore when you can't actually see through them. So it is sorely needed. On the late communication from the school committee, on the first sheet, I would move to make the identical motion as indicated here, changing only in the first sentence the date from February 13th to March 8th, and changing in two places in the motion the school committee to the Peabody City Council. So moved.
On that motion, and again, for clarification for members of the council, there's a term in that late communication talks about priority, and it will say 5 and 8. Those aren't priorities of the city. Those are SBA priority levels that are set based on what we're requesting. So we still know that the Welch School is their top priority and the center is their second. On the motion, any questions, comments? None. Roll call.
Councilors McGinn,
Yes.
Gould, Manning Martin,
Yes.
Turco,
Yes.
Gravel.
Yes.
Motion carries 5-0.
And would you like to make a similar motion for, that covers us on one of the schools? You want to make it for the second one? We'll call that one the Welch, and this one the center.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. On the second sheet of the late communication, making the identical motion as was made by the Peabody School Committee, changing only in the first sentence the date from February 13th to March 8th, and changing in two locations in the motion the school committee to the City Council of the City of Peabody. So moved.
On the motion, comments? None. Roll call.
Councilors McGinn,
Yes.
Gould.
Yes.
Manning Martin,
Yes.
Turco,
Yes.
Gravel.
Yes.
Motion carries 5-0.
Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just briefly, and I typically, again, and I've mentioned this in the past, don't like to give late communications to you, because I know you need time to prepare. Certainly, I remember that well when I was on the council. However, there are timely things that I'd like to try to get to you when I can, and rather than waiting a couple weeks for some, I thought, timely information, I wanted to provide that to you at this time. One was regarding the superintendent search at the Essex Tech Vocational School. As you're aware, Dr. Lapini has announced that he's leaving at the end of this school year and moving to a school in New Hampshire. They've begun the superintendent search, and there's a survey in the information I gave to you. If you're able to take some time to answer some questions that could help with the survey. The letters from Melissa Texera, who's the chairperson of the committee, and I want to thank Mrs. Dunn and recognize her. She's been spending a lot of nights over as our representative of the Essex Tech Vocational School, working on budget issues and now the superintendent search, and I wanted to thank her while she's here. Also, I wanted to mention that Councilor Manning Martin, I think this was at your suggestion, and it's working very well. The assessor's office and I, Leslie George and Susan Antonellis, attended and made a presentation at the Senior Center earlier this week. Very well received, talked about the different exemptions, and we gave credit to the City Council and you specifically about just the attempt on our part to get the word out as to what might be available. And again, it was very well received. We also, the assessor's office and I, taped a cable show that we're going to be putting on as well on PAT. I did want to mention, which was some terrific news. Jen Davis, our Park and Rec Director, one of our outstanding directors for the City of Peabody, was awarded the highest honor. It's the Peter C. O'Brien Humanitarian Award from the Massachusetts Recreation and Park Association. It was at a luncheon yesterday. A tremendous honor. She's worked extremely hard for the city, taking on multiple projects. It's a very diverse job, going from sports to recreational programs to forestry, and Brooksby Farm, now Tilly's Farm. And she's done an excellent job, and it's wonderful to have our employees recognized in that way. And the last thing I wanted to mention, the municipal light plant, I know there's a proposal in front of you. I wanted to voice my support for the light plant. The hard work of the commissioners, we've seen it certainly over the last week, tested with some storms. But I would submit to you that we're not voting for their raise. They voted for themselves for a raise. They own their budget. They have their own organizational structure. They control their budget. They make decisions. They need our assistance in moving it forward to the state under a home rule petition. And I would support that request. Again, that has nothing to do with our budget, nothing to do with decisions we make locally. That decision is made by the light plant, their commissioners, and I would submit that we move forward and push that forward to the State House for their vote and their approval, hopeful approval. Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman.
Any other matters properly before the committee? Councilor McGinn.
Mr. Mayor, I'm sorry, Mr.
Motion.
I got a promotion. Mr. Chairman, just on an administrative matter to move to receive those two late communications referred to by the mayor, so moved.
On the motion, all in favor, any opposed? Let's vote. Motion to adjourn.
Adjourn.
Stand adjourned.